Greetings, virtual wanderers. GameTyr here, where we dive into the essence of open-world gaming. Every system, every mechanic, every hidden detail that makes or breaks the experience. Ever wondered what corners of a game make it an open world? Well, we're about to dive into just that. So buckle up, grab some coffee, because this might shake your seat. Let's take a look. With countless open-world games out there, reviews tend to skim the surface, giving broad, generalized opinions without diving into the nuances that truly define an open-world game's quality. Not to mention, none of those reviews focus on the key aspects of what makes an open-world game amazing or not even worth touching. That's where we come in. We're here to set a new standard, one that actually answers the questions of open-world gamers have. What games have more interesting and varied side activities than the games I've played? Is there a game that does liveliness better than most? What about a game where I can dive deeper into tons and tons of customization? And where can I find a world that is truly seamless, with no barriers in my way? These are the details that matter, and we're here to break them down for you. Not all open world games get these aspects right, which is why we're creating the ultimate hub for open world gamers. Whether you're looking to play something from your backlog, checking out a game on discount, or trying to find your next big adventure, our detailed assessments will help you make the right choice. To break it down, we at GameTyr compiled 6 key aspects to review open world games. For each, we'll explain what it means, how we rate it, green, yellow, or red, and give you one solid example. To close it off, we'll break down how all the points will ultimately add up to result in the game tier. So let's go through each one. First, we have side activities, which refers to every activity you can do outside of the main story. Things like side quests, mini games, collectibles, shopping, you name it. As long as it's an activity that keeps you busy in the game, it counts. Now we know that not all side activities are created equal. That's why we also consider the weight of these side activities. Whether the side activity has a lot of depth, connecting it with the open world mechanics, or is just a lazy implementation of one. Onto how we rate these side activities. A game earns 1 point for each side activity that has depth, like a whole minigame. If it's a shallow side activity like pointless collectibles, it only earns half a point. A game earns a green rating if it has at least 4 points. A yellow rating means there are 2 or up to 3.5 activities. A red rating is given when a game has no activities at all, or only up to 1.5 points. For example, a game like Grand Theft Auto 5 excels in this category because it has a lot of side activities. You have the normal side missions, a ton of mini games, numerous different stores to be able to shop from, passive revenue options you can invest in, entertainment activities, and collectibles, although the collectibles don't bring much value. Now if you kept count, GTA 5 has 6 side activities, 5 of them being deep and meaningful side activities that keep you occupied, meaning it has 5.5 points. Thus, this one is an easy green. Moving on to the second aspect, Area of Freedom measures how open and seamless a game world really is. We'll be looking at 3 main points. First is how unified the map is. An open world game that stands at the peak is one with a fully unified map, allowing you to travel from one corner to the other without interruptions. No loading screens, no barriers, just pure exploration. But when a game segments its world into multiple regions, especially 4 or more, it starts to lose that seamless feeling. The more fragmented the world, the less immersive it becomes. Second is if it's segmented, how does traveling between and inside the regions work? The more seamless and easier it is to travel to another region, the better. For example, like traversing to another region by walking to the end of the map. On the other hand, it gets worse when traveling between those regions requires extra steps, like heading to a specific point just to trigger a fast travel, such as a signpost. When it comes to the regions themselves, Is there a way that allows you to traverse the regions faster, like a horse or a vehicle? Because let's be honest, walking through big areas are a pain. Lastly, how open each of these regions actually are. When it comes to the area themselves, some worlds are big and explorable, and some worlds have invisible walls stopping you from going any further. Whether they're soft, invisible walls that essentially kill you, respawn you, or even hard ones that don't even let you go beyond them. Or worse, regions that are corridor-like. These decrease the freedom of exploration in these areas themselves. Essentially, if something stops you or delays you from going to a location or area, it's minus points there. Now let's talk about the ratings. Green rating is awarded to games that excel in all three areas. In other words, achieved all 3 points. A unified and unsegmented map, seamless travel between locations, and scalable areas that have no invisible walls. These worlds feel vast, interconnected, and unrestricted. Yellow rating is given when a game meets 1.5 or 2.5 points out of the 3 criteria. Perhaps the world is open and accessible, but the world is segmented into a lot of regions, or it's unified but still relies on invisible walls or restrictive mechanics in some places. And red rating applies when a game only meets 1 or none of the criteria. These games often feature heavy segmentation, frequent invisible barriers, and limited traversal freedom, making the world feel constrained rather than fully open. Think of a game like The Witcher 3, where the world is divided into several large regions. While the map is segmented, most of your time is spent in just 2 main areas, Velen and Skellige, making the segmentation feel less of a big deal. However, moving between regions require fast travel via signposts and loading screens, which breaks the seamlessness, even though you can traverse the terrain inside the region with a horse. Still, within a region, the world is expansive and mostly unrestricted, with natural barriers that make sense. Despite this segmentation, it holds up well, earning it a yellow rating. Next up, Liveliness is all about how vibrant and immersive the world feels. First, the atmosphere. When you're in an open world, you also get to experience the atmosphere, meaning the landscape and all the sounds that go with it. And let's get this straight, not all games get this right. It could feel just like a background in one game, and it could feel like a detailed, jaw-dropping painting in another, which all adds to the overall atmosphere and immersion of the world, especially when you're making your way inside it. Good implementation of music soundtracks and ambient sounds are also a feature we consider, since it adds to the atmosphere immersion of the gameplay. Second, how dense the NPCs are within each area, whether it's in the settlements or outside of those settlements. So essentially, how lively the areas within the game feel, whether the towns and the wilderness are filled with life or feel abandoned. Lastly, it's not just about the number of NPCs, it's about how they behave, how they interact, and how they react to the player. A world could have an amazing amount of NPCs, but they could still feel less believable because the NPCs are only static accessories who have no daily routines like tending to their farm and aren't reactive to you as the player or any events that might happen to them. And we're not just talking about human NPCs, we're also talking about wildlife or any non-hostile creatures that might be virtually living. Now, how do we rate Liveliness? Green rating is awarded to games that excel in all 3 areas or points. The game has a landscape and soundtrack that complements the world, enhancing the atmosphere and immersion of the game. The NPCs are densely populated in a majority of the areas, and those NPCs behave in a realistic and immersive way. These things are what makes the world feel truly alive. Yellow rating is given when a game meets 1.5 to 2.5 points out of 3. This might mean certain areas, like the settlements, feel full of life with believable NPCs, but the areas outside of these settlements feel noticeably emptier. Or on the other hand, the NPCs themselves might look like static window pieces, even if the areas feel very populated with NPCs. And red rating applies when a game meets only 1 or none of these points. these worlds probably feel empty, with NPCs that lack believability, minimal density, and a soundtrack, if present, that does little to reinforce the world's atmosphere. Take Just Cause 3 for example. Just Cause 3 offers a visually varied world with different biomes. However, the soundtrack isn't anything special. While traveling across these biomes can be fun with Rico's mobility gadgets, the world often feels empty beyond the main roads and cities. Towns have enough NPCs and vehicles to create a basic sense of life, with civilians reacting to Rico's actions and outposts scattered around the map. However, outside of these populated areas, the world feels barren, lacking wildlife and dense pedestrian activity. Even within settlements, although the NPCs react to Rico, they often feel like lifeless props rather than meaningful additions to the world. With these highs and lows, Just Cause 3 lands in the yellow tier for liveliness. Next, customization in open world games is all about giving players control over their experience, allowing them to modify and personalize different elements of the game world. A strong customization system enhances immersion by letting players tweak their characters, vehicles, weapons, armor, skill system, to match their playstyle, and more. Notice how we mentioned weapon and armor separately? Well, most games implement them as two different features, so it's only fair for us to do the same. Now, talking about skill systems, they might not be included in customizations, depending on how they're implemented. If the player is able to fill out the whole skill system relatively easy, like before the game ends, then it won't be much of a choice-based feature, thus scratching it off the customization list. It's also worth noting that not all customization options are equal. Some might feel shallow, like a small amount of variations to choose from, while others feel detailed, possibly a big amount of variation or even layered customization. As for how we rate it, green rating is awarded to games that offer at least 3 distinct customization categories with meaningful depth, allowing players to significantly alter their experience, essentially filling all 3 points. So just like these side activities, shallow customization is only going to be worth half a point. Yellow rating applies when customization is rather limited, fulfilling only 1.5 to 2.5 points. And red rating is given to games with minimal or weak customization, such as fulfilling none to only 1 point. Let's talk about Batman Arkham Knight for this one. The game barely has any customization to talk about, except for its skill tree. But even then, we won't be counting the skill tree as a customization option. Again, it's not much of a personalization because you can max out the skill tree pretty easily throughout your playthrough. Thus, due to this, the game has 0 customization options, scoring a red for its customization. Engagement measures how well a game keeps you hooked outside of the main storyline missions. This can be the game's side activities, customization, or any other feature within the game. Essentially, if it keeps you playing until just about the end of the game, then it counts. This means the engagement factor has to also bring you back to the main story. That is, so you can finish the full duration of the game without feeling repetitive at any point. But do note that this is one of the trickier aspects to rate because engagement can be more subjective. As for how we rate it, it's a little more straightforward than the others. A green rating means the game has mechanics or features outside the main story that keep you playing all the way through the end, while seamlessly being intertwined with the main gameplay. A yellow rating means there's something engaging, but it's either only enough to keep you playing until the middle of the game, not for everyone, or doesn't bring you back to finish the main story. There's also the case where the game introduces new mechanics, but still feels repetitive. And a red rating is given when the game has no features to maintain any interest whatsoever from the player, or only enough to keep you engaged at the start of the game. A great example of high engagement is Metal Gear Solid 5, where the gameplay loop, completing missions, gathering resources, and upgrading your base can feel repetitive in the later stages, but what keeps it highly engaging is how your gear and companions meaningfully evolve over time. Your weapons, outfits, and buddies significantly impact how you approach missions, and as the game progresses, so does the complexity of your options. For instance, a weapon can eventually be upgraded into a silenced scoped automatic weapon. These upgrades change how you play, making stealth and strategy more rewarding. Because these tools are unlocked gradually through resource collection and late game progression, you're constantly incentivized to push forward. That evolving loop of challenge and reward is what makes Metal Gear Solid 5 score a green in engagement. Finally, uniqueness highlights what makes a game stand out. This can be any single feature from the game, or a combination of multiple features in the game. This could be an innovative combat system, a one-of-a-kind mechanic, or a feature that no other game offers. Depending on the game, you might feel like a certain part of the game is what defines it. Well, we'll be looking at exactly that here, except if another game has somewhat of a similar mechanic or feature. Then it'll also mean minus points for that game's uniqueness. Onwards to the rating. Green rating is awarded to games with a defining or a combination of multiple characteristics that make it truly unique. Something no other game has, or something it pioneered in a way that makes it stand out in the genre. Yellow rating is given when a game has a unique characteristic, but it's either a smaller scale feature rather than a core defining trait, or it's something that only a few other games have rather than being entirely unique. Red rating applies when a game lacks any distinct feature. Everything it offers can be found in countless other games, making it feel generic and lacking innovation. For instance, take a hold of Ryzen. While it functions as a spiritual successor to the Gothic series and offers features like a fully explorable world, joinable factions, and skill trainers, none of these mechanics stand out as particularly unique. Faction choices exist, but the narrative flow is predictable, and the quests lack the depth to make them truly distinctive. Even the game's skill system, learning abilities through NPC trainers, has a slightly different approach, but doesn't add much to gameplay or immersion. These elements might seem notable at a glance, but they've all been done before, and often done better. As a result, Ryzen doesn't bring anything truly new or defining to the table, earning it a red rating for uniqueness. Now, how do we take all these ratings and turn them into an overall tier score? Simple. Each rating has their own respective points. Green rating adds 2 points, yellow adds 1, and red adds 0. Remember, we have 6 review aspects, so that means 6 ratings. All we have to do, after having the ratings, is to convert them into points and tally them up. And that gives us the final score. The final score determines the game's placement in our tier system. S tier is a game that obtained 12 points, A tier is a game that obtained 10 to 11 points, and so on. Lastly, F tier is a game that scored only 0 to 1 point. If you want to dive into the details for each tier, feel free to pause and look through the whole table, because we'll be using this system for all of our reviews. So let's do a quick recap. We began by laying out why this type of review is even necessary. Most open world reviews don't touch on the things that actually matter to fans of the genre. We looked at the kinds of questions open world gamers are really asking, which is about meaningful side content, liveliness, a unified, seamless world, and deep customization, and showed how our review system directly answers them. Then we broke down all 6 of our review aspects, from how we evaluate side activities and area freedom, to how we score liveliness, customization, engagement, and uniqueness, even touching on how engagement and uniqueness are more subjective than the others. We also explained exactly how the color-coded red, yellow, green scoring works, and how the final tier is calculated, so you can easily compare games in one place. Everything we've done here is designed to make GameTyr your central hub for open world reviews, helping you decide what to play, revisit, or finally take off your wishlist. Up next, we'll review each open world game that we've defined in our open world deep dive video, based on these review aspects, so stay tuned for those. That's it for now. I'll catch you in the next one, and until then, happy exploring.